My name is Ben Jamison. As the Reverend Marianne mentioned, I serve on the Board of Trustees. In addition, I also am a licensed practitioner through the Centers for Spiritual Living, have a master's degree in spiritual psychology, have a book coming out later this year, but enough about me. Erin sends her love. She is grateful that all of you are here. She is out celebrating love with her family this week. And so for those of you who are here for the very first time, I highly encourage you to come back and hear Erin speak next week. She is a dynamic, powerful, amazing speaker and is just a delight. Yeah. So give yourself that gift of coming back and hearing Erin. The title of my talk today is Mine to Do. And this title comes from my own spiritual practice. Whenever I look out into the world or look within to my experience of the world and want to make a change, I ask myself, what's mine to do from a perspective of my spiritual practice? What's mine to do in adjusting my consciousness so that I can change my experience of what's happening all around me? And so today we're going to look at that in three ways. The first two of these areas that we're going to explore come from the Board of Trustees. This is Board Sunday, though I promise you won't be bored. So the two primary initiatives for the Board of Trustees from this year are going to be community and tithing. So in both of those, we're going to look at what's mine to do in relation to our community and to how we give and support that community. And then finally, I want to look at the spiritual practice of loving and how we can utilize what race consciousness is doing around this time of year to give a boost to our spiritual practice of loving. But before we get into that, I want to share just a little bit more with you about my story to highlight why the board has chosen community and tithing as our main focuses for this year. I grew up here at Unity Village. My family moved here when I was 3 years old, and I loved being here. I loved going to Sunday school and running around the grounds and seeing the fountains and going to the pool and all that Unity had to offer. I was drinking it in. I loved it. I was growing. I was learning. I was a young little kid. It was great. As I grew older, I began to look more out into the world, and I saw what I perceived to be contradictions between what I was learning here and what was being taught and practiced elsewhere. And the more I looked into those and the more I challenged those, the more those contradictions became directed towards me. And it was not a very pleasant experience for a very young person to have that negative energy directed towards him. And so I decided I was going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I was done with religion. I was done with spirituality. I was done with all of it, period, no more. And I lived most of my young adult life in that fashion. But after many years, I began to notice that my life was not working, that it was going steadily downhill. And I decided at a certain point, out of desperation, that I needed to come back to my spiritual practice to make a change, to feel better. At that time, I lived walking distance from a religious science center. If you don't know, Unity and religious science, now Centers for Spiritual Living, are the two primary New Thought metaphysical philosophies that are at work in the world. They're very similar, teach very much the same thing. So I walked in to this religious science center, listened to the talk was fine. Then I went down to the community area, and I stood in the darkest corner, hoping somebody would come say hello to me. I had such a low sense of self-worth at that time that I was not about to go talk to anybody else. And I was just waiting for that one person, somebody to come up and say hello, so I knew that I could come back. And nobody did. After about 15 minutes, I decided I was done, that I was going to leave and not ever come back. And I saw one other person walking towards me, and I said, "One last chance." And she walked right past me. And then about 10 feet later, she stopped, paused for a second, and turned around. And came back and said hello. And we had a brief conversation, and I left, and I thought, well, someone said hi, I can come back. So I went back the next week, and she introduced me to other people, and then I came back the next week, and they introduced me to more people. And I started to get to know the community, and I started to get involved in the community. And the next thing I knew, I was in a class, and the next thing I knew, I was in an accredited class, and then I had a license as a spiritual counselor, and I was serving on a board, and I have a master's degree, and I have a book coming out, and I'm speaking to you guys here at Unity Village Chapel. All of this, 180 degrees from where I was when I first walked into that church. But it didn't start with a deep and committed spiritual practice of prayer and meditation every day. It didn't start with the hours and hours of spiritual counseling that I went through with my teacher to learn more about myself, to accept my own inherent worth. It started with one person saying hello to me. So that's why community is so important. Because here, when people walk through those doors for the very first time, they may be looking for that one person to say hello. And so when the Board of Trustees says we're going to focus on community and on building and enhancing our community, we're looking at two different areas. One, we're looking at how we can be more open and welcoming and inviting to the people who come in the doors for the first time. This is truly a very loving, open community. But when it comes to how we greet new people, how open we are, how receptive we are, how do we make those people feel, it's time to ask ourselves, what's mine to do? What's mine to do to take this amazing community and make it even more open? For me, what's mine to do, I know so many of you here, and I love the connection that we have. But there's more of you here that I haven't ever said hello to. So what's mine to do is to find somebody I haven't said hi to every single Sunday that I'm here and say hello to a new person. That's how I'm going to engage deeper in making my community more open and more inviting and more welcoming. Can I have all of my board members stand up, please? For those of you who are here for the very first time, if you are so bold, look around at any of these people standing up, and at the end of service, come up to one of us and say hello. Tell us what it was like to be here for the first time. Did you feel welcome? Did you feel invited? What did we do great? What did we do not so great? Thank you very much. If you're so willing, come help us to make this community more welcoming and inviting for you. If you've been part of this community for a while, feel free to go up to those same people with your ideas, but also come with a willingness to implement those ideas. And we'll talk more about that when we get to tithing. So that's how we're looking to expand the community in terms of how welcoming it is and how inviting it is. And so I encourage you to ask, what's mine to do? We're also establishing a deeper connection with our community this year. We've launched a Spirit Groups program, which are small group ministries happening outside of service. We have 3 rounds of this happening this year. The second round is going to be starting in a few weeks. Can I have my Spirit Group leaders who have openings in their groups please stand? We have these 2 lovely ladies over here who are hosting groups outside on Sundays in ways that you can jump in and build deeper connections with people, build more powerful relationships with the people in your community, step deeper into your spiritual practice. Thank you so much. If you're looking for a way to connect deeper in with your spiritual community and to take a deeper dive into what spirituality is, come talk to these ladies after service. See if their groups might fit for you, if that schedule might work. What's mine to do in terms of deepening my connection to my community? Not just making it more welcoming for those people who are coming in for the first time, but how can I make it more welcoming for myself? How can I find greater experiences of love and connection with everybody in this community? And how can I use that to support myself and my spiritual growth? Because for me, it was that community that I stepped into that made it safe for me to look at the ideas I had about myself that were so false. It was that community that made me feel loved when I didn't really know how to love myself. So community is incredibly important. It's not created by Reverend Erin, it's not created by the board, it's created by each and every one of us. So as we look forward to this year, ask yourself, what's mine to do? And when you get that response from within, act upon it powerfully. The second area the board is focusing on this year is tithing. Now, tithing, we can often focus a little too much on the financial side of tithing, though to step aside and talk as a board member for a minute, that is a very important part of tithing, and we have a wonderful auto-giving program, which you saw a slide about up there, that'll make it really easy for you to give on a consistent, regular basis. I highly encourage you to look into that if you feel so called. But tithing is about so much more than just what we do with our finances. And I have often sat, particularly in the beginning of my spiritual adventure, I have often sat in a sanctuary where a talk on tithing happened and felt sort of taken out of the community at that point. Because at that point, I didn't feel like I had the money to give. I didn't feel like I had the time to give. I didn't feel like I had any talents to give. And so we're going to take this idea of tithing and we're going to look at it from a completely different way than we typically do. We're going to focus on not only that there is the opportunity to give financially, but also of our talents and also of our time. And I want to take this time today talking about this practice to demonstrate how it activates the law of circulation in our lives, not only in the future, but instantaneously. So if you're so willing, if anybody who's checking in online, if you could raise your hand, and anybody who's checking in the house, if you could raise your hand. That should be everybody. Everybody who is here, everybody who has joined us online, whether you realize it or not, have tithed of your time today. You have given of your attention, you have given of your energy, you have given of yourself to create the unique expression of the community that we all get to experience today. Everybody in this room is a giver. Whether or not you recognize it, whether or not you honor it, you all gave of yourselves, and we are all grateful that you did so, because without you, this would be a completely different experience. Different energies, different expressions of that divine spirit that we talked about in meditation would be here, and it would be a different thing. So from that very basic level, I want to recognize, and I'll encourage you to recognize as well, that you are a giver, that you give to this community in a very powerful way, and that without you, we wouldn't be who we are. That activates the law of flow in your life. That activates the law of circulation in your life. As you give, so you receive. We often talk about this idea in spirituality as, I'm going to give now, and then I'm going to get later, and I'm going to give now so that I can get later. And if we're looking at it from that perspective, we're missing the mark a little bit. Think about it this way. Everybody in this room and everybody online who chose to join into our community today gave of themselves and gave of their energy. There are probably 200 to 300 people here and online today. So by you choosing to give your energy and your attention to this community, you instantaneously received that same gift from 200 to 300 other people. What a return on investment. And it happened instantaneously in your choice to give of your time and your attention today. This is the same for people who give of their talent. Imagine an artist who decides to paint a mural for a church. That artist is giving of their talent, but in the instant that they give that talent, they are receiving the creative capacity of spirit. They are receiving the experience of having creation flow through them and doing something that has never been done before. The same instantaneous receiving happens when we give of our finances, when we give of our money. Through the spirit of that giving, it happens. It doesn't matter what we give. If we come in with a penny, and we give that penny from the consciousness of, I have more than I need. Regardless of what it is, regardless of the size, I have more than I need. I have enough that I can give, and I am so grateful that I have received enough that I can give even this penny. If we come at it from that spirit of our giving, we will feel rich regardless of what we give. I had a very strange experience shortly after I became a full tither. I'd been tithing for about a year and a half of my finances, and at tax time, much like it is now. And so I added up all of what I had tithed so I could write it off of my taxes. And I looked at that number and I thought, I wonder what I could have done if I had all of that money back. And my stomach dropped, and I felt myself constrict, and I felt poorer than I have ever felt in my life at the thought of having money back. Because that money was given freely. That money was given in a way that allowed me to feel rich because it honored that I had received so powerfully and that I had more than enough to share. And so when we give from this place, when we give from a way of knowing that I am receiving from Spirit and I'm receiving more than I need, and that whatever it is that I give, it is given in love and gratitude and celebration, we can feel rich regardless of where we are. Now, it also activates the law of flow later in our lives. So let's look at those of us who gave of our time today. We instantaneously received that gift from every single other person, but because you're here today, you may hear something that you haven't heard before. You might get a new thought or a new idea that sits in the back of your subconscious just germinating. And then a week or a month down the road, you might be involved in a conversation and that pops back up and you make a different choice than you would have otherwise. And because of that different choice, you have a more abundant experience. You have a more loving experience. So you receive instantly because you came, and you receive in the future because the law of circulation carries forward. Same with that artist. Somebody's going to come and see that mural and go, oh my God, this person is amazing. I want to buy their work. And suddenly, without them intending to get more clients from having given this wall because they just gave it out of their goodness, out of their desire to serve, they receive. Same thing with when we give of our finances. If we give from that intention of knowing that we are perfectly provided for and that we have more than enough, that aligns us with the law of circulation, that engages it more powerfully in our lives, and we do receive. my experience of tithing, I went from about $25 a week to a full 10% gross tither overnight because of an opportunity with the spiritual center that I was serving on the board at that time. And the odd thing was, I didn't suffer a bit. I didn't notice any loss of money. I didn't notice any less ability to move in the world or to buy the things that I wanted or to experience the world the way I wanted. It didn't seem like I had given a penny more, even though I was giving significantly more. The way we activate the law of flow in our lives through giving of our time, of our talent, and of our money can be an amazing, empowering experience. So what's mine to do when it comes to tithing in support of this community? For me, what's mine to do is to recognize more clearly all the ways that I give. To recognize for myself that when I show up to this community, I am bringing my light and my love to it. And that without me there, it would be a different community. And to honor that, to honor all the ways that I give, and to open to receive all the ways that I receive from my giving. What's mine to do is to look at the spirit of my giving. Not what I give, not how much I give, but how I give it. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. That's our sharing affirmation. We say it every week. We can say it by rote. The question is, do we? Do we say it in vain repetition, or does it mean something to you when you say it? Do you feel into what it means that divine love is giving through you? What is the spirit of your giving? When the baskets come by, whether or not it's my day to give financially, do I put my energy into those baskets? When they come by, do I bless them? Do I send my loving to those baskets? When they come by, do I say, I have given of my time and my attention and my energy today, and I put that in this basket. I put that in this way of giving so that it can be accumulated with everything else and that we can bless it together. How do I give? What's mine to do to deepen my spiritual practice and recognize all the ways that the law of circulation is activated as I do so, and to celebrate myself for giving in the ways that I do. So when we're looking at this coming year from a board perspective, these are our intentions. To make our community more broad and accessible to the society at large, to make it more welcoming to new people, to find ways that we can step deeper into that community, build more intimate, empowering connections with people here. We're looking at how we can increase the spirit of our giving, at how we can participate more deeply in what we already give and honor and recognize ourselves from that place. And I want to take a moment to honor and recognize all of you for having given of your time and your attention today, for being here to create this amazing community that we have today. So that's the board perspective on things. That's where we're going from the board. I do want to take a few more minutes here to recognize the big pink chocolate elephant in the room, which is Valentine's Day. And then take a look at it from a spiritual practice. Take a look at it from a very shallow spiritual practice. We like to talk about deep spiritual practices. I'm going to talk about a shallow spiritual practice. It's very easy to do, and it's very empowering, even though it's a little shallow. We like to talk in New Thought about race consciousness. I probably mentioned it at least once already. Race consciousness, if you're not familiar with that idea, basically if you were to dump everybody in society into a bucket, put all of their consciousness in there, add that all up, and divide by the total number, you would have the lowest common denominator of human experience. That's race consciousness. And we often talk about it in New Thought and metaphysics in a little bit of a disparaging way. Oh, race consciousness is dragging me down. Oh, if not for that race consciousness, I would be so elevated and so spiritual, but race consciousness is doing this. In reality, though, we can look at race consciousness and use it to benefit our spiritual practice. What is the race consciousness doing in the world right now, and how can I piggyback on that in my own spiritual practice to get that little goose in the spiritual practice? So right now in our society, there is a greater focus on love than there will be at any other time of the year. So while it is always important and powerful to look at love as a spiritual practice, not something that happens to us, not something that we fall into, but something that we consciously and intentionally practice, if we engage in that practice more deeply in this time of year, we can ride that wave that society is putting towards love and have a little extra boost. A rising tide floats all boats. We've all heard this statement. Same thing. This rising tide of loving energy can provide a little extra lift in our spiritual practice of loving if we choose to engage in this time of year a little more than we would otherwise. Now, Valentine's Day itself is a little tricky. There have been times in my life when I absolutely hated it. There have been times in my life when I loved it. There have been times in my life when I've been neutral about it. Odds are everybody in this room, somebody in this room has one of those experiences going on. But we're here. We're 2 days away. It's in society. Now, what do we want to do with it? How do we want to access that additional intention and energy to benefit ourselves, our society, and our world? So I have a couple different suggestions, a couple different ideas that we can use to engage our practice of loving a little more deeply, particularly related to the holiday of Valentine's Day. So if you're willing to feel into this a little bit, what if anytime you heard somebody talk about their Valentine's Day plans, what if you took a second and went within and said to yourself, "Dear sweet spirit, thank you that romantic love is an experience in the human condition. Whether or not I am experiencing it currently, I am so grateful that it exists as part of the human experience, and I celebrate every single person who gets to have that experience right now, and I celebrate the fact that romantic love is possible in the human experience." What if you did that? If you did that, you would align yourself with the energy of romantic love. And whether or not you are in that experience right now or you aren't, it would help to harmonize you with it and draw that experience to you. For many, many, many years, I celebrated Singles Awareness Day. And I would proudly go up to people who were talking about their holiday plans and say, "Hey, happy Singles Awareness Day, how's it going?" And oddly enough, every year I was single. Took me 2 years after I stopped doing that, of constant, consistent practice and intention to undo all that I had done in celebrating Singles Awareness Day when all of society was focusing on loving. I was deharmonizing myself with it, but I didn't realize it. So if we use this as an opportunity to harmonize ourselves with romantic love, rather than deharmonize ourselves through Singles Awareness Day, through all the stupid chocolates, all the expensive restaurants, it's just a Hallmark holiday, blah, 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 all of that deharmonizes us from that energy of romantic love. And who doesn't want romantic love as part of the human experience? Who wishes that was not part of the possibility of human experience? Nobody does. So we can use Valentine's Day in that way. Anytime you hear somebody talking about plans for Valentine's Day, honor the fact that romantic love is part of the possibility of human experience. Celebrate those who are in it and align yourself with that energy of romantic love. What if every single time you heard an advertisement for Valentine's Day, what if you stopped and turned within and said, "Dear sweet spirit, open my heart. Open my heart to high spiritual love. Use me as a vessel through which you pour more high spiritual love onto the planet than has ever come through my consciousness before, and direct this high spiritual loving to every dark corner of the earth, to every sad heart, to every place that needs a little bit of extra love. Use me, sweet spirit, as an avenue through which this love can go and enlighten and elevate the consciousness of the planet so that everybody can feel and know that they are one with life, one with spirit, and that they are loved." What if you took every single advertisement as an opportunity to feel what it feels like to let the divine love through you and know consciously that that divine spirit knows exactly where that love needs to go and is going to direct it to every single heart that needs it? What would it be like if you felt into that, like we did a little bit in meditation? And what if you used every single Valentine's Day advertisement to remind you of that practice? What if every time you walked into a store and were bombarded by all of the decorations, what if you stopped and turned within and said, "Dear sweet spirit, I know that society is confused. I know society thinks that this is a Hallmark holiday about selling cards and consumerism and romantic love between two people. But I also know the truth, that all of this explosion of decoration is a love note from you to me. That this entire holiday was created in our society so that I could not miss the fact that I am unconditionally loved by Spirit? And what if you took a moment to look at all of those hearts and all of that chocolate and all of those cards and felt that every single bit of it was there for you from Spirit, so you felt loved? If you do that in your consciousness, then that's the truth of the experience. If you look at it that way, then it is absolutely 100% true that the entirety of Valentine's Day being celebrated throughout all of humanity at this point in time is just so that you know God loves you. What if you were to take that approach to Valentine's Day this year and next year and the year after that? How would our society change? How would you change? My friends, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to share with you, to be able to ask the question of what is mine to do to make our community more welcoming, to deepen our community connection, to ask the question of what is mine to do in my giving practice, and to ask what is mine to do with Valentine's Day, regardless of my relationship status, to bring more and more loving into my life and into the world. What I know for sure from standing up here and seeing the beautiful face of Spirit as each and every one of you looking back is that Spirit sings your praises. The entire universe conspires for your highest good. And on Valentine's Day, and every single day, God is deeply, madly in love with you. Namaste.